stuff that really interests me, and I love to go deeper. All right, we are live, and yeah, the actual, and there'll be the streamed, what's it called, the comments on the side. So maybe we'll have some cool questions happening. Yeah, if you've got you have that one open, the comments, whatever it is, window on the side. If you want, you can open that up. Yeah. Cool, man. What's you're in Berlin, right?
No, in Germany at the moment, but not in Berlin. Actually, most of my friends, actually, who musicians, are in Berlin or in Germany. Yeah, but I'm currently kind of on tour, on the second part of the tour, and I will be doing a show in Australia in a few days. Yeah, looking forward to the flight.
Yeah, right.
It's absolutely terrible. Yeah,
it was like 25 hours or something.
Yeah, it is split in two. Like first flight is 6 or 8 hours, and the second is 13 hours. And I would have to spend like 8 hours at the airport as well, waiting for the second flight. So it's like, I don't know whether I will survive it. I mean,
dude,
I'd be too old for this.
Yeah, brutality, fucking brutality, man. I'm like, yeah, the leg situation, man, like being tall at all is just like, you just feel like you're being folded. But nice. Australia before the States, actually. Because I'm like, Australia, I always have this image. I'm like, I'm gonna have to get maybe like 8-10 times better known before I'm hitting Australia, but I don't know. Maybe I should try to look into it more. What's the vibe there? Like a festival or?
Yeah, it's a Illuminate festival in Adelaide.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a small city as far as I can understand. So I think they're trying to decentralize like culture stuff around the country, which is the thing apparently in Europe and in Australia as well. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, hell yeah. And you said you're on tour. What's other than Australia, what's you doing a bunch
of? Yeah, then actually Switzerland, and the final one should be in the Switzerland actually.
Yeah, after that. I always have great gigs in Switzerland, all parts of the country. Yeah.
Do you do often gigs in Europe?
I mean, a lot, about 10 years ago, and then I was not touring a bunch for a while, and now I'm kind of getting back out there because the band that has done the most touring is Extra Life, which has recently reformed, revived, or whatever you want to call it. So it'll be, actually, it's a whole year from now we're going to hit Europe again, but next May we'll do a big old month long.
Okay, I'm going to visit. I mean, we're still alive in a year. We'll definitely come with you.
Yeah. Maybe. Well, I mean, are you right? You don't know where you're going to be in a year, right? I mean, you playing on
absolutely unpredictable. So
I mean, you're going back to the Ukraine as soon as you can, right? I mean, that's the idea.
I mean, no, we'll see. I don't know. It depends really on how things go. So
yeah. Wild. We seem in great spirits, given that you're besieged. I mean, what else are you going to do, other than just persevere with music, right? I mean, this is it. But anyway, we can start to do the announcement. Welcome to everyone who is watching or listening on the podcast. Today, I'm psyched. We've got Oleh Shpudeiko, also known as Heinali. And he tells me Heinali, you can pronounce it however you want because it's from Dune. But your name is from reality and from Ukraine.
Yeah.
So So you're in where in Germany are you?
At the moment, I'm in Siegen. It's a small town.
Yeah, Siegen I've never been to. Yeah. But yeah, man. Oleh has we met just through Instagram, just through him messaging me and about the show and a friend in common or acquaintance, colleague in common. Bjorn Schmelzer. Anyone who has not watched the Bjorn Schmelzer episode of last stream,
do it just after this live stream. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think this will be like a companion episode. Just more and more medieval music. It's just the weirdest brand over here at Last Things. It's like, what is like, I was watching the promo Patreon video. I was like, what is this? But So but I was checking out your music, right? There's like a lot of early music influence. Which you Yeah, I would love to see. Yeah, Clan de la Voix is Bjorn's vocal ensemble, but and yeah, you saw them recently in Lisbon. Is that?
I saw Bjorn personally, but I actually visited their performance last year in Utrecht, I think it was. Yeah, during the Early Music Festival. And it was absolutely amazing. They sang Just Can, the material from this the latest album of theirs.
Yeah.
And it was the most amazing and the most probably difficult musical performance, because somehow it I don't know. I actually, since the beginning of the war, the full-scale invasion, I didn't actually listen to a lot of music, and this was, I think, the first like full-scale concert that I attended. And during this concert, actually, when they were performing this music, it felt like all this experience that I had since the 24th of February 2022 kind of came on stage and started speaking with me as an abstraction. And it was a very difficult thing to experience, to live through. But I didn't actually expected this to be, because it's early music. This music is 600 years old.
Yeah.
But it did it to me like no contemporary music does this. Like it's absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, had you not really because yeah, I mean everyone who's like hasn't really checked it out. Oleh's music deals with like modular synthesis, analog synths that is incorporating medieval music, and of course your older stuff. We talked a little bit about your older stuff too, but yeah. recent projects have yeah. So you hadn't, but right, but you were a longtime fan of early music. You said before that, but it was just like you got like a new gust of inspiration from this from seeing the Bjorn concert.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, absolutely. This actually was, I think it was the first time I actually heard early music live, performed live, because in Ukraine, like we don't really have much going on with early music. We have quite powerful contemporary classical and contemporary like new music ensembles, but early music stuff is very, I don't know, underground in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was interested in that, but I mean, but on your record, on one of them, you've got a whole bunch of people playing like straight up medieval instruments. You got someone playing a theorbo or teobro, whatever, and a lute player.
Teorbo was actually Andrew. He's from London. He's from United Kingdom. But two musicians who played the Baroque oboe and the Baroque viola are from Ukraine, but they more like specialize in Baroque music, because we have this open opera group that promotes Baroque operas in Ukraine, and they do like they do like really good performances of Handel, for example. So
I feel like, I don't know, like the word early music, like I mostly think medieval and Renaissance, but I could kind of think of early Baroque. Like I could sort of think of Monteverdi maybe as early music, especially if you're doing period instruments. But then Handel, for some reason, I'm like, that's classical music. I guess it's just who plays.
Yes, kind of. But it's still like it's part of early music. And usually when you search for early music festivals, most of music that performed at these festivals is Baroque music. For me, like Baroque music is about affects, and it's not really like before Baroque music, we didn't really had affects, like very like specific states or specific emotions. Like music wasn't supposed to evoke specific emotions. Like it was ambiguous, and I really like this about early music, the ambiguity of it. You can't really point out what is exactly is being invoked to you.
No, that is exactly what I loved about it. I mean, it's like you're dealing with music that's beautiful, but it's not really humanist. I mean, it's like you're kind of looking at humanism when you get to that Baroque era, and then more like Enlightenment, right? It's like this is about people and the human experience, right? This stuff. Early music. It's like something being in a minor mode is definitely not like sad necessarily. There's like. It's, I mean, the seriousness of it. I mean, I always think of like early music. I just think of this like humility of just like people, like the human to me in that music is this very like humble, sort of abased, like standing before like the colossus, of like God or the church or like the sacred or whatever, just like dwarf. Like, I don't know, this is, you know what I mean? Like, whereas you get to the humanist kind of era, it's like the you know, yeah, the subject in music is very like proud and kind of dignified, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. But it's still like during Renaissance era, it still kind of remains ambiguous, even with Monteverdi. Before like this, he's finding out these affects, he's developing affects, certain emotional states. Like if you listen to early madrigals of Monteverdi, there's much more ambiguous than his later stuff. So it's kind of it's not really like a flick of a switch. It's
Of
a
course
very
not.
gradual process, and you states of music developed during this process.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny because you're saying like abstract, like in one of your one like interview I was reading, you were saying how your music was both abstract and personal, or someone was like, you know, is this political music? And you were like, well, yes, there's like all the, you know, aspects of that, especially now. But then you were like, well, but a lot of it is, you know, I think you said the word, I think you said abstract and personal, you know, which I thought
it's about KYIV ETERNAL. Yeah, this is a specific album, but it's actually a sidestep from my core practice. It doesn't really has any connection to early music. KYIV ETERNAL, that is.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's a very specific album. It's about personal stuff, like seeing political through the cracks in the personal stories, but not the other way around.
Yes. Okay. Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, because how many records? Right, because KYIV ETERNAL, that's everyone listening. That's the new Heinali album. Yeah, right. Sidestep, right? Because you're dealing with like found sounds from your home city.
Yeah, it's actually all of these sounds were present in my like backup hard drive. So. And this is just a musical archive. So all of these compositions, they were already there. So I just chose fragments, looped fragments of the compositions, and I chose fragments from the field recordings that I've been making from recording since 2011, I think, in Kyiv, and up to 2022. When the full-scale invasion started. So it's like a remembrance. It's a memory piece, a memory capsule, some people call it, of the peaceful life before the war.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be personal. It's going to be personal and political. I mean, you can't have the separation there because, I mean, it's just it's like happening in your life, right? It's just there, right? Yeah, man. That's KYIV ETERNAL. I mean, it's cool that you're like riding for your home city, but kind of not mentioning Ukraine as a country or a nation, you know. I don't know. It's like, in a way that makes it sound more personal or something. It's like the place where you live, and rather than like
because it is about my personal history there, because I spent 36 years of my life in Kyiv. So it like all of like first relationship, first breakup, every first thing with me happened in Kyiv, and I have a lot of stories connected to this city, of course. And so yes, it is about me, about my personal story. I'm not trying to be a voice for Ukrainians, something like this. I'm my own voice, but still, I find that from the feedback that I've been receiving about this album, that a lot of people kind of find their own narratives and stories in these recordings. What is interesting, not just Ukrainians and not just people who actually lived in Kyiv. So quite interesting.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, like what the, how this how your new record is being received in Ukraine versus in the States, elsewhere in Europe, like where your music sits in the rest of Europe versus it just in your home area. I mean, I like I mean, because it was written up in the Times, right? The new record in the New York Times. So that, I mean, clearly it's landing over here for sure. Is it a different kind of, do you think people are getting something different? Well, of course they're getting something kind of different. Do you have a sense of what they're getting that's different, or like?
Yeah, it is different, but for example, with William Basinski and his Disintegration Loops, like it is a very American record. It is about 9/11, but people who listen to it, like in Ukraine or in Europe, have very different, feeling of it, like a very, very different experience. But it's still somehow, implicitly kind of tells you about this stuff. You don't, even if you don't read about it, I feel that there is like this hidden meaning there that can be uncovered if you want to. But of course, it can speak without this. Like for example, if we take like a contemporary artwork that is in a gallery, often, for example, you would have a writing, like a text, supplementing this artwork. So yeah, so for me personally, like the best artwork is the artwork that speaks for itself, but if you read the supplementing material text, you can probably get another layer of meaning out of it. So, it will be richer. But if it needs this text to speak to you, then there's something wrong.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, beauty first,
yes.
and then discourse second. Yeah, I mean, when something's not beautiful,
I mean, it's a bit conservative, but I mean,
truth and beauty. I've been called worse than conservative, my friend.
Yeah,
but they're especially lately. Well, actually, it's funny because not to go on a tangent, but I do like I was reading, someone was just like going off about attitudes in the humanities and where the humanities are going, and someone said something like, of course we need to, having it be a critical turn, the critical turn in the humanities is obviously a great departure from the outmoded view, the truth and beauty model. I was like, nice job, you're leaving truth and beauty behind. Like, well fucking done, dude. Like, what are you talking about? Anyway, I found it, I mean, of course I like critical stuff as well, but I was sort of like, I don't know, I was struck by someone using truth and beauty as being like this negative thing that we're supposed to leave behind in any case. But I love discourse around art. I mean, like, if something's beautiful to me, like, I love hearing all the artists, the social implications, the political stuff.
I think the problem is not like with truth and beauty. It is who defines truth and beauty. This is the problem. Like, if you have someone who defines it for you, then this is a problem. Like, if it's not you who defines it. So
yeah, I think like a collective thing, though, some agreement. I mean, universals of truth and beauty, I guess I distrust, but I don't know, there being like some kind of will toward some kind of agreement on what's true and beautiful, at least in aggregates of people, so that you're not totally on your own with thinking something's beautiful. At least you can look over at your friend and be like, it's good, right? And they can be like,
yeah.
But yeah, man. I mean, like, it's funny, the Bezinski comparison with your stuff. It's so obvious. Somehow it didn't occur to me. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like, what was it just the recordings thing that made you want to go away from this modular synth and medieval thing? This sort of left turn in what you did on the new record, like. Like, was it just that you were like, oh, awesome, I have these collections, or was like very deliberate?
No, it was trauma. I mean, I didn't want to release this record. I didn't want to work on this music. I had to do it because it's like the only way I could deal with the trauma that I experienced in Kyiv, in Ukraine. Because I remember specifically, and I wrote about it in the record, like about liner notes. When I returned back to Kyiv, I spent the first month of the war in Lviv. It's a city in the western part of Ukraine, which is a safer city, kind of. And Kyiv back then was very dangerous. Like, Russian troops tried to actually capture Kyiv. So there were a lot of absolutely horrible stories about it. But when I returned after the Battle of Kyiv was over, I experienced this feeling like Kyiv felt as if it's like a living being, like as if it's alive. It's very difficult to actually describe. I mean, it sounds a bit like cheesy. Oh, the city is alive. But it feels actually painful because you wanted to protect it kind of from harm, to embrace it, to hug it, something like this, but you couldn't do it, obviously, because it's a city. And it's not just me. A lot of my friends, colleagues who remained in Kyiv or who returned to Kyiv as well, they experienced this feeling. And back then I thought that this is a very interesting experience to work with as an artist, but I didn't really know how can I do it. And then actually it hit me that I have this huge collection of archival recordings of KYIV, mostly KYIV, and as well as my music that was recorded during peaceful times that connected with my personal history, and it came together like very easily. Like, I just have to combine these records, and this is like the way I could embrace KYIV, kind of work with my trauma.
The trauma of the war, personal trauma, and then like a break in your a break in the evolution of your music. It's like a traumatic, like a crack. You use the word crack.
Because just before the full scale invasion, I was working on a new album, Organa, that was actually about Organum, the 12th and 13th century polyphonic compositions of the Parisian school, Leonin, Perotin, and like all the other anonymous people. So, and kind of the invasion brought it to a halt, to a stop, and then it still lives in my live music that I perform. I perform on a modular synthesizer, and it came with all of this, research, artistic research, and all of this development of the patch, the way the modular synthesizer is set up, kind of. I now use all of this in my live performances.
We're gonna talk. We got to like. Oh, okay, we're gonna get all into it. But what was I gonna say? I mean, it's interesting that you'd like. To me, it seems like having are you saying like for the live? Because I know for the live stuff you have you do the analog synth generative stuff written by like patches and stuff. It's semi-indeterminate and you're dealing with it in improvised ways, but it's all modular synth, right? But were you saying that pre-recorded stuff that you did on the new record, that's also now in your live thing, or no?
No.
It's not.
I even, as an exception, I performed it live in Poland, and I'm going to perform probably another time in Poland as well. But it was like one-off special project exception. I didn't really enjoy it very much performing, not because I didn't like the stuff, but because it's too difficult to perform for me personally. Because it's, and it feels not very good to perform it not in Ukraine, not in Kyiv. Ideally, I thought of performing it just another time, the main performance, to do the main performance in Kyiv after the war, because it would make sense, to do it. It's something that is it's uncharacteristic of what I do live right now, KYIV ETERNAL, and my modular performances have nothing to do with KYIV ETERNAL at all.
Does it bug you at all that that, like I said, it wouldn't bug you, but I mean, like, how do you feel about that? Just that KYIV ETERNAL has been getting, I mean, has that been getting like more attention than your other stuff has? It's kind of like next level for you and stuff. Does that feel weird? Does that feel weird, or are you just like, bring it on?
I'm okay with it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I understand that part of this attention is purely political. It has nothing to do with the music. And I accept it because I understand that, unfortunately, the role of the artist during the war is not the same role as an artist during the peaceful times. Your work would be used as a weapon, kind of, whether you want it or not, because you share this identity. But you can actually understand it, reflect upon it, and like do your own thing about it. Like for me personally, it was KYIV ETERNAL.
Absolutely. It almost seems like, I don't know, I mean, not to over determine like the difference between the new stuff and your medieval influence stuff, but like it almost seemed like the idea do you think of like using found sounds, like pre-recorded sounds, that almost is in a way like the complete opposite of generative, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
yes.
Of like, right? Because analog,
it's like completely compositional work. Like I worked on this album as a music composer, and it's not really what interests me the most, because I don't. My background is not musical at all. I don't have formal musical education. I went to do music like out of the blue. Just as a teenager, I was listening to a lot of weird stuff. There was like early 2000s and late 90s were a very interesting time in Ukraine, like in Eastern Europe in general, after the fall of the Soviet Union and after all this wild capitalism. And we had a lot of interesting culturally interesting things going on. We had these movements like, for example, Ukrainian Gothic Portal. Like it sounds like as a Gothic movement, like a goth rock, the Sisters of Mercy and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But actually, it kind of combined a lot of people who were into music that weren't anywhere else, like Coil, Current 93, Neo Folk. Sorry, guys, but I mean, as well, Dark Folk. Dead in June as well. Aphex Twin, Otaka, even Arvo Pärt, like contemporary classical music as well. So people who were into this, inside this community, shared music recorded on tapes or later CDRs. I think it's for the younger people who watch this live stream, this like CD-ROMs that you burn. But I mean, you write. Record
onto the
So we did that like back then, and I listened to a lot of weird music, and I realized back then that I didn't actually have to have musical education to try my hand in music. And I was quite friendly with computer interfaces because I was planning to study computer science, and I was very into programming and all this stuff. And I started experimenting with the computer music software, like tracker software at first, like bus, Jazz Caller bus tracker. And this was the first, And I still kind of think that it never went away, because what attracted me the most about it is the feeling of wonder when you don't really know what the fuck are you doing. Like you're just trying to turn your knobs, like to experiment basically, and then somehow the machine begins to do wonders, and you don't really know how it happened. What did you do? But you have this feeling of wonder, and you want to share it. And this is what made me record music and share it with other people, because I thought, okay, this is something precious. I should share it with my friends. And this is what modular synthesis does as well. So it's very native.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like so, but then you kind of did learn some kind of, did you sort of self-teach or teach yourself like music theory stuff? Because I read, when you talk about this medieval stuff, you're like clearly talking about modes and it sounds like, I mean, it doesn't just sound like the vibe of 12th century music. It sounds like someone who really, has like, at least on some level, like studied, the details and stuff, right?
Yeah, I did some research in medieval music, but I can't really, I can't read scores. Like, I mean, I can't read them like in a long term. Like, it would take me a week or two to go through the score. And, I know musical notation, but I can't fluently read scores, and it is a bit difficult. But for example, to analyze like Perrotin's Vider und Omnes organa, it's not really that. I mean, I can do it, like I did it, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, I think it would be much easier if I had like formal musical education. But then again, probably I would have been a very different person.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people, I don't think people even need to like be deeply into medieval music to like what you're doing, right? I mean, people don't need to have a background. I mean, it could probably, steer people in that direction, I mean, you've got these layers, you've got the slow, you've got the drone, the cantus firmus, bass line, and you've got the like this a kind of more active voice going, and then the really, really active voice going, it's very different than like, your older stuff seemed a little more like, I don't want to say, like, I don't know all the subgenres of electronic music enough to be like, it's this, but like ambient, just in the sense.
Yes, sure.
Like sound, like like not as like polyphonic, right? Like
Absolutely, yeah.
right, a little more
It's
glued
ambient music,
together.
definitely. Yeah. Absolutely, ambient music, and it's this is why I hate ambient so much right now. It's not because I don't because ambient is bad. No, it's just because it's very difficult to go away, like to break the ties with this ambient genre. Because if you release like several albums in ambient genre, then it is very difficult to to explain what are you doing. Like if you are not doing ambient anymore, you will still be labeled as an ambient composer. And my problem with ambient is that it doesn't really mean anything anymore. Like when Brian Eno did it, like it meant very specific things. It was revolutionary, in a way. But then there came another generation of composers who just, instead of like rethinking, reflecting, reimagining ambient, they just copied the most like superfluous basic characteristics of ambient. And then it became a massive movement, like a genre, a really like big genre. But like, most of these records don't really, they lack the reflection and intellectual reflection. So it's a bit, a bit difficult to when you say I compose ambient music. What exactly are you saying anymore?
I don't know. I mean, it just I mean, to me, when I think of ambient music, I guess I think of stuff where like the unfolding of it is not a huge part of it. But see, that might just be completely like not correct.
Yeah, because a lot of ambient music actually has dramaturgy and narrative, like some of it at least, that is marketed, labeled as ambient. I would argue, for example, that Tim Hacker isn't actually an ambient musician, but
Tim Hacker
being Tim Hacker.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't really. Right. What I've heard of his, I would not think of as ambient. I don't know. I mean, to me, when I think of something being ambient, it's not a genre thing, but as a just like descriptor in my head, I think of something where I'm not focusing on individual elements and it's glued together. There's this fused kind of state. There's a state.
Texture.
There's like a texture that's like static enough that even if it does unfold, I'm not like listening. I don't know, something like unpolyphonic or something. Like it seems like, if I'm following lines and details, it's like, it's no longer ambient to me or whatever. So I don't know. Yeah.
But it's really difficult to explain like what I'm doing to music festivals, especially electronic music festivals. I mean, I had this, and I still have this experience when they ask for text of like that represents what I'm doing, or when I'm telling them what I'm kind of, I'm reimagining medieval music, like polyphonic music in modular synthesis, blah, 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 blah. And then they say, oh, okay, so you play ambient music.
Yeah. Like, nope. I mean, the new stuff is not even ambient. I mean, at all, with a capital A or a lowercase a. I mean, I don't know. Although, if someone were really unaccustomed to listening to medieval music, and I played them, maybe not your stuff, but I played them like some 5-voice or 4-voice, like relatively dense, like Josquin or something.
Yeah,
I could imagine someone who's not accustomed to listening to that music or not accustomed to listening to classical music experiencing it as an ambient thing, because they're like not really used to picking out the way the lines are, right, like interacting or whatever. So there'd be like no horizontal kind of linear feeling to it, and they'd just be feeling it as an atmosphere.
Do you think that actually the ambient music allows them to experience this music, medieval music, because they know how to listen, at least on some level? They know through ambient music, because ambient music is about a certain state as well. Like it evokes a certain state. So these people know that some music is supposed to invoke a state and not tell a story at all.
Yeah.
And this is why maybe it's actually a good thing as well, because they can experience it in this way because of the.
Yeah. Sort of like just people who aren't like afraid of boredom, people who aren't like allergic to like taking it easy with listening and not pushing things around with their ears or whatever, I mean, because with that medieval music, I mean, even if you are accustomed to picking out the lines and you can hear all the counterpoint, it still is quite a bit less narrative than like sonata form. I mean,
Sure,
it's
yes.
right. I mean, it's compared to like sonata form or like just like Mozart or Beethoven. Compared to that, it is ambient music. I mean, it is completely
It's
like
not about story actually. It's about the state. I
yeah,
think it's a very complex state, and it's the whole idea of following several voices at the same time. It's like this associative experience. Like you kind of starting to this. Certain parts of your consciousness, like they become separate, like separate strands,
yeah,
and you are not yourself anymore. And
yeah,
it's a very like religious like experience, maybe mystical experience even. So
yeah.
this is probably this is why they used this texture to talk about God back then.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, yeah, I think people do respond. I mean, nowadays to drone music as a trance thing and very like repetitive music as a trance thing. But yeah, with stuff like with medieval Renaissance counterpoint, it's like that stuff doesn't repeat like
Yeah,
at all.
yeah,
But following, I go into a sort of a trance state by just following the relative motion of the stuff just moment to moment in a sense where it becomes trance-like because I'm not looking at long overarching development and I'm just kind of like constantly checking out the interplay in a way. Yeah, it becomes trance-like for sure. I mean, yeah, you were talking about like the sacred. I mean, you don't really do this organized religion for you, Christianity?
no, I'm not a religious person at all. Like, but I'm interested in it because kind of sorry, but the sacred kind of was removed from the contemporary world.
It has. It
Yes, it has.
absolutely
So,
has. Yes.
and I think that it is not very good thing. Not because like I'm a fond of religious thinking or mindset, but just because we have this capacity in our brains, we evolved to experience mystical experiences. Like we have this hardwired in our brains.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting for an artist to work with this? To work with this experience, to bring back sacred through the secular, through this secular perspective, through the secular lens,
Yeah.
and to work with it, but not like not to leave it outside, but to use it to create new meanings, senses with it.
Yeah, yeah. You wrote on one of your blog posts on your blog on your website. You were talking about like a being faced with a hollowed out sacred, like we both just agreed we're living in. And that it's you were talking about sort of like the death of God, which I guess we're just taking as a I'm not taking it like literally, but I mean
Yes,
if we can
sure.
if we can accept that as a cultural moment that means a lot, obviously,
Yes.
this desacralization of everything. Yeah, you were saying, with that freedom comes responsibility, and it's like now you got to make the sacred. You've got to come up with it because it isn't given to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, what did you say? You said something. Wait, I wrote it down. You said something about war.
Yeah.
How you in your blog post hyper meaning you were saying
Yes.
you said those who reject modernity often see war as a spiritual force to fill the hollowed out sacred. I was like, that is so fucking interesting talking about war in the middle of what you're into. And I last week I did a live stream about Yukio Mishima. I don't know if you're a fan or a not fan or whatever.
I don't know a lot of, like, I read one book of his when I was a teenager, and that's all. I'm not
Yeah,
really.
I mean, he's very much he's quite a bit more elegant and nuanced about it than just saying like war is the sacred, let's
Yes.
go to war. But it's that though. I mean, it is sort of, what happened to the warrior spirit, or like Ernst Junger, like a guy like that,
Yes. Yeah.
it's like so all about that,
Yeah.
yeah. So I
But the
I
problem is
appreciate
that this meaning that is generated with the war, like it's not authentic meaning. It is imposed to you. Like it's not something that through your own experience, through your trauma, through your own work, you can develop this meaning, and it's very it's fragile and it's yours and it's very precious. This is very heavy thing, and it's very easy to accept this meaning. So we have to be careful with it.
Do you think that the kind of I guess I don't know, like the kind of like what you think about for like the sacred and like making the sacred? I know it's kind of like a clumsy way of saying it, but this kind of like post death of God, like breathing meaning and breathing the sacred into dealing with the hollowed out sacred. Do you think it's actually deeper now than back when you just had God? I mean, is it or is it almost or is it more just like you can't do the God thing because it's done, so we have to do this, but it's like you can't even compare. I mean, because that's kind of how I think about it. I'm like,
no, I mean, it's difficult. It's really difficult to compare, partly because all of these people are no longer alive. I can tell it about this. Like it's.
Yeah, like that's the thing. It's like I believe in God, but like what I mean by that,
yeah,
I can't pretend that that's the same thing as a medieval guy saying that. I mean, it would be ridiculous for me to say that it's the same thing, but I feel like I am gesturing at the same.
But we don't really know, like phenomenologically, we can't really even know how it was to believe in God during medieval times. Like for a person, it's certainly probably a very different experience from contemporary religions, definitely, and contemporary Christian religion as well. Even from the religious fundamentalists, or maybe even like they are far more different from the medieval. It's just so
right. You can't even compare. I mean, this is what a lot of. I mean, this is where I end up. Where I have a hard time relating to certain kind of like cultural. I don't know, like the neo-folky kind of like the sort of aesthetic reactionary vibes of that. A lot of time I'm just kind of I'm like, yeah, I'm doing that, but I know that we can't go back. Like there's at least there's like I like the earnest desire to resacralize the world. More than an earnest desire, it's like the mission, is to resacralize this like utterly fucking hollowed out fallen world. But it's like I at least have I have the sense of humor and awareness to be like, this isn't the Middle Ages. Even if it were desirable to go back, you can't. So let's like like.
This is actually this is what Bjorn actually talked about the reenacting the past, about this mistake, or like this is very, for example, in early music, like a lot of people try to do this reenactment, like it's a Renaissance fair or something like this.
Yeah, just LARPing, just straight LARPing. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I do think there's something kind of like, because like I got into early music so seriously without any. I mean, I think I got into it the same way you did. It's just like, this is beautiful. Like, and then, whatever that represents culturally, you're like, oh, I guess so, like later or something. But having got into it totally on a purely musical level, there is this like irony to it or something playful about it to me that like, oh yeah, I'm doing like, this evokes the past of a culture that I wasn't even a part of because there was no Middle Ages in New York. I mean, so it's like there's just something like for me, it's almost more out there, or not out there, but like kind of like unrooted or something for me to be like doing medieval stuff. Like it's really like not real. It's really not real traditionalism. But what I'm interested. Oh, okay, but no. See, I don't want to sidetrack it because you were about to talk about Bjorn's stuff. Yeah, let's talk about because this is Bjorn Schmelzer, the guy we were talking about. Everyone, wait, bring up what you were going to bring up with his stuff and his view of like history and the past, right? You're going to say,
this is one of the ideas, like the problem with the reenactment of the past and the general problem with the early music, that they kind of think that we can know how it was supposed to sound back then, which is absolutely ridiculous. And the most interesting point to me personally, is that we kind of think that they knew how to play this music back then. But why do we think that? Do we know actually how to play our contemporary music? Right. Isn't it like mysterious? Isn't it like we can't really fully explain it if it's really good? And for example, if you, I don't know, take David Lynch's movies, can you really explain them? Like in 500 years, would, like, they think that we knew what they mean.
Right. So, well, that's a pretty extreme example, because it's like, yeah, he can't explain it. No one's even telling you how to interpret it and stuff. Yeah, but yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, but if you read, like, Bjorn is, I think he's right in this. Like, if you read a lot of statements about polyphonic music of the contemporaries during that era, like medieval, they were quite, perplexed with it. Like, it wasn't like the music that was mainstream, that was very, like, it wasn't popular music. It wasn't music that spoke in an easy language. It was difficult music, and some people didn't like it at all. So they had, it kind of brought out contradictions that were inherent in this time. And this is what good art does, actually. So
he seemed to have the sense that, like, deep art, like, always exists outside history in some way, or like outside, like, linear history, like it's like outside of some sense that, oh, this great art is going to inevitably led to this next historical period, which inevitably led to this. I mean, Bjorn seemed to be talking about that it's sort of, deep art is like a rupture that kind of like comes out of history, and like its historical era is like part of that, but like it ends up pointing to like something kind of just infinite and outside time. I mean, you was it you or someone that I was brushing up on for this stream was talking about the monad, that, like, was that you talking about? Like,
it was Bjorn. Yes, it was Bjorn. He was quoting someone. I don't quite remember, but yeah,
how early music is a monad, which I'm not, I'm not super up on Leibniz or the the people who sort of were like dealing with this idea, but right, we're talking about like a hyper specific little point, and then from that, like that point is like the tip of this cone, right, that kind of like goes out to the infinite, but that it's like something that's like looking at these pieces of early music as these hyper specific points that like that aren't in a row in history, but sort of like the cone goes out of the linear time of history or something. I mean, there's I can feel that. I mean, I am interested in the historical. I am interested in how things changed. I mean, that is interesting to me for sure. But yeah, the linear. I mean, it's interesting that we can love early music so much, and then I mean, I do love stuff from the entire Western canon, but I mean, there's areas that I'm so much more into than other areas, and I mean, the ways in, I love Beethoven. It's so different. It's so different for me than early music, that like the historical connection is like kind of almost only interesting in an intellectual way. Like, I don't really need to hear Beethoven in.
Do you have like problems with at least some periods? Because for me personally, I have it's very difficult for me to listen to 19th century music in general.
Really? Okay. Yeah. There was a while when I felt that, well, yeah, there was a while when I was really, when I first got into early music, it was at the same time as I got into like 20th century, like post-war classical music, European music. And I felt this connection between those two things. You could almost say pre-Enlightenment, post-Enlightenment or something. That's a historical, whatever, late labeling or whatever. But there's a sensibility there, right? This sort of detachment, like you were saying, the sort of not having the affect, the human affect. So yeah, there was a while where everything in between the like 16th to the 19th century, I was like not really as into. But I've been getting way more into 19th century music though, man. I mean, I've been going hard on Schubert like the past year or so. But it's less I mean, I hear it in just such a different way, man. Such a different way. But it's kind of filling in the gap. The 17th century music's kind of interesting because it's this sort of like underrated, kind of like weird in between time. Like it just gets like not a lot of love, like just like.
You mean like Dolan or?
Well, he gets some love, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know, like Heinrich Schütz or like
okay. Schütz is very popular in Germany.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't know though. No one's when people tell you about classical music in the States, no one's like, dude, like you got to check out Buxtehude or else like that. I mean, it's like it is kind of like on some beard stroking, like, oh, that was interesting, but
yeah, it's different in Europe because it's like a very different tradition. I think European. It's actually interesting how classical music tradition is like experienced and talked about in the United States.
It's so interesting, man. Because I mean, over here, if you're trying to like be a classical composer, like actually think of yourself as like classical, it's gonna be LARPing kind of. I mean, you could be like, I make American music that owes a ton to the European Canada music. I mean, that makes sense, you know what I mean? But it's like
European canon, like a German music of the 19th century, or
no, I mean,
what is European canon in the United States?
I mean, in my mind, I mean, Hildegard through Stockhouse.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like the whole. Yes, well, okay, that would be the like lineage. I mean, the actual canon was like common practice era, right? I mean, I'm thinking Monteverdi through.
It's not that different
through through Schoenberg, yeah. But I mean, like in the States, it's like. Yeah, I mean, it's not our tradition, we have, I mean, American music, it's like jazz, blues, and pardon me. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, like, yeah, no, I mean, it's, I know even with, things changing and, globalization and just various stuff, I mean, it's still like, I know, like if you go to see classical music in Vienna, people have a different connection to it there. I mean, it's like actually home turf, kind of thing. This is interesting to me though, man, because you got this recent record that is like specifically about the Ukraine and current situation. But it's not pointing at all to anything traditionally Ukrainian, which is why I was.
I have big issues with it.
Yeah,
because it's kind of colonial because Soviet Union, like when Ukraine was subjugated to Soviet Union during the Soviet period, they kind of came up with this phantom image of the Ukrainian culture, which was rooted in the pseudo folk traditions that they kind of reinvented. It had nothing to do with the authentic Ukrainian folk music. And since then, we kind of battle with this image because it's deeply it kind of put its roots inside our cultural soil, and it's very difficult to root it out. Yep. So I try to stay away from this. And actually, what is probably more important is that Ukraine has always been in one way or another part of Europe, and it was a part of the European political and cultural processes always. And Ukraine doesn't really have to be, you don't really have to reference Ukrainian folk music to be Ukrainian. Like you can, for me personally, for example, if I'm referencing medieval Central European and, most Central European medieval music, it's Ukrainian as well.
That was my question.
But it's very difficult to explain to people, for example, here in Europe, when they hear like modular synthesizer, like a polyphony, generative polyphony and a modular synthesizer that is referencing medieval music, European medieval music. And I get asked these questions here a lot, like, what is Ukrainian about your music? Like, you are a Ukrainian music composer, you identify yourself especially during the war as a Ukrainian music composer, you kind of preserve and develop Ukrainian culture here abroad. Okay, so what is Ukrainian about it? And I'm telling what kind of post-colonial question is that? Why it should be rooted in
I mean, well, you're just answer is just because I made it, motherfucker. That's how it's Ukrainian.
Yes, because I come from Ukraine. I'm Ukrainian. I made it. This is Ukrainian music.
That's it. But I was definitely, you answered one question before I asked it, which was, do you consider this? Do you consider this French? You're interested in French medieval music, right? Do you consider that European, like your yeah. Do you consider Ukraine European? And yeah, you answered that. It is.
Absolutely,
You know,
yes.
sort of, yeah. Yeah.
It has been part of Europe, and it still is. I hope it will be in the future. So kind of, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But on the same hand, I realize and I recognize the fact that I was brought up more on Western culture, like during 90s and early 2000s. Like most of the cultural materials that I, consumed were Western. It had to do with my family and with me personally, because everyone is different here. Some were brought up more on kind of mix of Eastern European or even Russian culture, so it's a bit complicated. But for me personally, I was more attracted to Western culture. You tweeted about the Terminator 2 as the most important. I don't know how but I mean this is actually true. It is the most important movie for my generation, definitely. And I'm telling this as a Ukrainian.
That's Terminator 2 is very important, and it's about a guy that comes. It's about a robot that goes back in time. Back in time to change the future. So you want to talk about revisionist history? I mean, that's about as you could send the Terminator, back to mess with Ukrainian traditional music and make it shape it to some narrative that serves political ends. I don't know.
It's actually about fate as well. Like it's about determinism, or like lack of determinism, free will as well. Like it's actually a quite complicated movie if you think about it. It's just very, on the surface it's very simple, and it's very, it's a blockbuster. It's a Hollywood blockbuster, definitely. It's well made though, quite well made.
Oh yeah, Terminator 2. I mean, yeah. That was just such a that like pivot into the 90s. I mean, that was right around the time. So it was right around the time the Berlin Wall fell, but I don't know if that really is particular. I don't know if that's relevant to Terminator. Like trying to make too many, like overly relevant, But yeah, man. Oh, you know what I was interested in, man? We were talking about. I saw something on. I saw that one of the record, when I checked out your old stuff, I didn't really get to spend much time with that record Anthem, but I checked out a couple. I'd like sampled a couple of tracks of it, and I was super musically like way into that. I know you were saying that your older stuff, you're just like, but that's not as old though, right? I mean, that's like
it's more or less fine. I mean,
I was trying to more or less fine. Yeah. No, because I was really into that in a way that was actually kind of different from the new one and kind of different from the Madrigals record. So maybe I'll get a chance to spend more time with that. After this, but but you had a track called Hauntology, right? So I'm
okay. Oh no. It has nothing to do with Hauntology. Actually,
is that cringe?
It's a cringe. Yeah.
I didn't know. Well, because I don't know, because you're talking about like the past. Time. I mean,
actually, KYIV ETERNAL is kind of Hauntological album because it's about the future that was contained in the past, and we don't have the past anymore, so we don't have this future. Past. So. In this regard, yes, because that Hauntology track is it's a cringe. Yeah.
Oh, you mean you mean that just the music, that track musically you find cringe?
No. Conceptually.
Oh, just to call something.
It could be named any day. It can be called any name at all. It doesn't really matter. It was just like something that I really liked. It sounded good. Like.
Okay, so
I was reading about Hauntology, and I was thought, okay.
Well, that's that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, yeah, but I mean, your music. I mean, so you're reading like Mark Fisher, right? I mean, that was this, or you're a fan, right? Yes. So I mean, Well, I mean, your stuff, not the modular stuff. Sort of your new record with the Found Sounds, KYIV ETERNAL. Not so much the polyphony, the analog synth polyphony stuff, but in general, some of your older stuff sounds like music that was considered hauntological or whatever. I mean, I know, like, right. So for Mark Fisher, that has this thing about like the cancellation of the future, right? Like you outlined, but then it was also kind of used to apply to like certain aesthetics from like vaporwave, which. None of your stuff sounds like super vaporwavy, but the older stuff has some of that. I mean, a little. Mm-hmm. It does sound like somewhat of that time, like in a cool way. I don't know. Were you a
maybe
vaporwave
just
fan or?
no. Maybe just sit through because I wasn't really listening to a lot of vaporwave, but of course I was aware of this like movement and all that stuff. But
Yeah,
maybe just sometimes it just gets there and you don't
yeah.
really. And probably actually this is the first time I hear about it, so I'll probably have to re-listen, and maybe I will find like new meanings,
Okay.
discover new meanings because of your comment on it.
Oh, that's the
So
first
it's
time.
got
Okay.
yeah, like I didn't even think about it
Yeah, yeah. I
in
mean,
that way.
I don't tend to because that music was not a big part. That didn't like hit for me really. But just when I saw that the title on ontology, I was like, oh, okay, right, reading Fisher, and then I was like, oh, right, okay, right. So maybe he likes vaporwave or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that music is so much more to me actually more pessimistic and like dark
Yeah.
than your stuff. I mean, none of your stuff actually strikes me as like dark. I mean, this is a compliment.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
well,
I mean,
actually, the stuff with the Matt Finney that we do is quite dark.
is that kind of
It's really
dark? Okay,
psychological.
yeah,
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 it is.
yeah,
It is intentionally dark. So
yeah. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess though, I'm thinking like to me like that vaporwave stuff is like it's like dark in the sense it's like empty. Like it's not dark like mournful or depressed. It's like vapid, like it's
yeah,
vacated,
okay,
like
yeah, yes,
there's
yeah,
this like
yeah,
no uh like it might be beautiful, but there's no like will toward beauty or like earnestness. Like everything you're doing, it like strikes me as very like earnest beauty.
yeah,
Like like it's not like I
yeah.
don't know. Yeah, like
I
yeah.
I mean, I kind of a bit in envy, like with people who kind of can have this distance to beauty, because I can get to beauty only through the being earnest about it.
Yeah, yeah, the
So
personal, yeah.
it's literally like depends on the person. Like some people actually can produce beautiful works, and they don't really need to have this. They don't have to be involved fully. They
Yeah.
can have this distance. But for me, it doesn't unfortunately work. So
Yeah. I mean, I've been trying to take myself out of my own. Oh, by the way, I'm not seeing any comments in the stream. Maybe someone leave a little comment just to be like, there's nothing wrong with the comments. I don't know. I'm wondering if maybe people are just being quiet or if there's something wrong with the comments. In any case, but yeah, I mean, I'm like really trying to for my next phase of stuff and with the new extra life, I'm really trying to empty myself out of it. I mean, it's still going to be super personal in the sense of earnestly, seeking beauty. There we go. Sin Funfaria is in the comments. But taking myself, I mean, some of my older stuff, I mean, it is so like, lyrics wise, I mean, you're singing, man, lyrics, you're just like, I am a human presence.
yeah,
Like this is me,
yes,
so I'm trying to, I
yeah,
mean, I think that's another reason why I've always been attracted to medieval music, which I didn't realize at the time that this was part of it for me, or maybe it wasn't at first, but it's become something I love, is just that it's vocal music. It's vocal music. It's a completely
yes,
vocal music,
yeah,
yet has the detachment of like not having the affect.
yes,
You said affect,
yeah,
so it's like to just go straight to the sacred, it's like, I mean, I think, well, the fact that it's religious music and the text is a predetermined liturgy mostly.
yeah.
That
But
helps.
it's also about this the idea that the music came from God. Like there's this myth about Pope Gregory, or the whole thing about Gregorian chant, which is absolutely like it's not true. But like there was a myth that Pope Gregory actually wrote all these chants, and they were like an angel or a dove, a Holy Spirit, inspired him to write these chants. So it kind of like all the music that you're singing, the words and melodies, actually don't come from a human being. So it's
Yeah.
depersonalized in that way. But in
Yeah.
your way, it's like, of course, it's personal because you wrote the lyrics and you
Yeah.
sing them. So it's
Yeah. I mean, that's what, I have this essay about melisma. I should really send you this. Oh man,
yes,
you will be into this.
because I watched your video on melisma where you explained your essay. But,
Okay. So you saw
yeah,
that. Yeah. That was plenty.
yeah.
Yeah. I'll send it to you anyway. If you watch that whole thing, you've heard me talk.
I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah.
Well, thank you. But yeah, like yeah, I mean, I do think of like I think of opening my mouth and it does come from heaven. But see, this is the thing. It's like what I mean by that. It can't be what Pope Gregory, it can't be what they thought that meant 1,000 years ago. It would be ridiculous.
Yeah, but you don't have an institution about you, like for example, because they had an institution that said this is the music that was written by God.
Yeah.
And if you if you perform this music, you kind of performing music that is written by God. It's not about, like in Hildegard's music, I see this personal connection actually.
Yes.
It's more prominent because it is written through her, like it is her music. She was inspired. I don't know whether she was like suffering from certain condition or she was generally inspired. I don't know, but she experienced this, and it's very personal, and it shows. It's like the Margot Fassler. I think she has this really nice quote about Hildegard's music that is as if like a dynamite was thrown into Gregorian chant. But this is like Hildegard's music. That's
yes.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you see how some of these people who are like the greats, or like part of canon. Actually, at the time, they were a rupture. It's like they were a moment of modernity, like at the time. Like a sort of a shattering. I mean, it's coming out. I don't. It's the milieu or cultural context you come out of affects this stuff so much, because I mean, it's like there's like, I mean, if you come out of academic classical composition, which still kind of does exist, or at least. Or maybe it could be academic electronic music. I mean, when you're coming out of like the conservatory and like university system, you do have that institute. I mean, I wouldn't know about this personally because I didn't, but it's like you do kind of have this God vibe of like, it's like God is discourse. It's like as long as your music serves discourse and therefore serves the intellectual. Like you're like producing intellectual work with your music, with the blurb on the side that explains it. You're serving like the church of the, you can't just, it's like heresy in academia to just be like, this is beautiful. It came from God. You don't have to believe in God. I do. That's it.
In the United States as well, because I thought it was a European thing.
I mean, I don't know. I know people. I know people who make beautiful music in those contexts, and like secretly it's like, it's not really about the discourse, but like, or like discourse is second, but whatever. But
it's really about God. Yeah.
But let's say, but actually, I don't know anyone who says they believe in God except this one young Catholic dude I hang out with who like we argue anyway. But what was I going to say? But yeah, but I mean, you can't. I don't think you can exist in the university realm without saying things about without draping your music in or you having your music produce stuff for the university to chew on other than just the piece. You have to be like dealing with X, Y, and Z. Which I'm not allergic to with my music. Talking about it, this whole channel is me being like, it's about this, it's about that. But I am allergic to the idea that you have to do that. Like the idea that you have to do that is fucking dark. I mean, I just happen to be like a brain guy, whatever. But people, not you shouldn't have to do that. There's something religious about it to me. I don't know, like the university being very church-like or something.
Do you come from the academic background?
Nah, not really. I mean, I went to just like a liberal arts college where I, quote unquote, majored in music, but that was not a conservatory background. You take a little bit of music theory, harmony. I mean, you take some Western harmony, but then there's also kind of like a.
Basically, they give you tools to make music and not like indoctrinate you.
Well, they don't indoctrinate you into any particular form. I mean, I kind of wish they indoctrinated you more, because into at least into some craft, like like indoctrinate. It'd be like at a place like where I went, it's like even more purely about academic. Like intellectual, philosophical, whatever, ethnomusicological concerns. You know what I mean? There's just not a lot of like, these are chops that you need to know, because it'd be like, oh, here's a course on like 4-part harmony. But you don't really
Yeah,
have to know
okay.
that. You don't really have to know that because that's just the West and that's one thing. And then to be like, here's like 3 weeks on African, West African drumming. But you don't have to know that because it's just African drumming. It's just like, it's like this a really multicultural. I mean, it's like cool, but
Yeah, yeah.
also kind of like,
It's like a contemporary art approach in general. Like contemporary
basically,
artists usually get.
yeah,
It's not
basically,
about the
yeah.
tools of the trade and the trade itself. It's more about being a thinker.
Yeah. Which is fine. But I mean, if you go to a conservatory, in the States and study composition, you do get like classical music, like you learn orchestration, fugue, form, and analysis. Like you do all that shit. Then I think once you move on and you want to have a career and as an academic composer, then I think you have to start being like, my music deals with the body and space and spaces and bodies, which is not necessarily bullshit, but again, it's bullshit.
Absolutely,
It's bullshit that you have to. Bullshit that you have to. But in any case, so I mean, like you were like you were a computer programmer first, like that was like
actually. It was very slow and painful process actually for me, because I started like it was just some experiments with music, and then it became a hobby, and then gradually from hobby it became a profession. But there was a very dark period, probably 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 years, when I had like no job. It was extremely heavy. And I tried my best to make a living making music in Ukraine, which is absolutely insane. But I mean, internet kind of, I think, helped me a lot, because I still don't have a lot of music commissions coming from Ukraine. Most of them are from Europe or the United States. So but this jump from music as a hobby to music as a profession, it was absolutely, I mean, devastating experience, really.
Sure, man.
And I'm still not. I mean, it's worth it, but I mean, I am not really sure whether it's really worth it, because I became like a traumatized person because of that period of my life, and so I still deal with these traumas. So
yeah. I mean, I work day jobs, and a lot of people I know who don't or recently stopped having to work other jobs. They don't even say like, I'm a professional musician. They're just like, I don't have a day job right now. It's like tomorrow is not promised. They just want to they don't want to like jinx it or whatever. But you've done some stuff. I mean, your work can work in. I mean, it's pretty out there, but I mean, you've done stuff where it's been in video games, right? You did like a video score.
Like as a commercial music composer, definitely. I wrote for Bound with the video game. It was 6 years or 7 years ago, probably. Actually, a very interesting experience, because the music structure is very differently in video games. For example, like in a movie, you would have linear music that is synchronized with the scene, but in video game, I mean, the time is not as linear. I mean, the player could return to the location they previously visited, for example. So you'd have to write this dynamic music, they call it, in layers, and you have to think not in terms of like linearity of time, but in horizontality of layers as well.
Oh, you mean you mean verticality or
verticality? Yeah, no, not just horizontally as in a movie, but vertically as well.
Yeah, there's layers.
Yeah, and you have to compose these layers that could stand on their own and work together, and each of these layers should kind of induce certain affect, certain emotional state or something like this, which is different from the others. So it's a bit tricky to get into, but once you kind of change your mind, and it's starting suddenly, like it works, and you just compose it, and you can just think about it just as a regular musical form. You don't really have to switch anymore. It just works, and it's a very quite interesting experience, and it was very fun as well, because I'm actually when I was a teenager, I was a gamer, like a very
sure. I figured, yeah.
Yeah, and I still try to play games. It's getting more and more difficult, unfortunately.
But just because they're so complicated and stuff, or just you
No,
don't
no,
have
no,
time?
no. Just the time. Yeah, time is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. Yeah, I would love to spend more time playing games. I still have it in me, like, and I think that a lot of actually games influenced me as a composer as well. Like Quake, the first Quake soundtrack that Trent Reznor did, like, from Nine Inch Nails.
Oh yeah, I've heard that
It was
soundtrack, although I've never
it,
played Quake. Yeah, yeah.
I think I mean if you're interested, try to play it with the soundtrack because it kind of what he did there and what is very rare still in video games, in computer games as well, is kind of he creates the whole sound world in a game. It's not just soundtrack; it's also the sounds of the player and
Yeah.
weapons and
Sound
like
design.
ammo
Yeah.
packs, sound design. But this sound design is kind of integrated into the soundtrack, so it feels almost as if it's the same like musical space, and
Yes.
it's
Yes.
very and it's dark and it's like unapologetically dark, because right now usually when you have like dark music or post-industrial music for a video game, it's like produced in a style of, and it's not really coming from the inner
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. It's yeah.
But Trent Reznor, when he wrote this soundtrack, he was in a very dark place. Like it was the period with the downward spiral and all this, like and it shows. It really shows in this game.
It's
I
it's from
really love it.
it's from all the way back then, huh? Because I mean, I've only
Yeah.
heard that, like, I was just on like a Nine Inch Nails like YouTube wormhole, and I just found some stuff where it's like that game being played, and I was just like, okay, this is the music from it, you know. So that's I've never actually played it, but I have checked it out a little bit. Yeah, I mean, someone I was talking to was saying how like just the real that music, film music has just totally degenerated, and that like all the real creative stuff has gone into games, man. And it's like, I mean, I am just so I don't even have the urge to get back into video games because I just stopped being into them when I was like 13, and I think I'm a little older than I was born in '80, so it's like I sort of like I checked out of video games at like
Okay.
Sonic at like the first Sonic the Hedgehog and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like I don't like but I feel like I want
Quite
to.
early.
Yeah, like I feel like I want to catch up on everything from the past 30 years just to be in the conversation of like contemporary culture without even
Yes.
whether I like video games or not, man, because
Yes.
it's like you're telling me this stuff about the scores, it's like how that I mean, it almost sounds like you know how like with like Earl Brown or like some of these or even like early Feldman, it's like you'll like
Yeah.
have stuff that's like unsynchronized
Yes.
and but it's right, like each element
Yeah.
is designed so that it'll sound good together in any configurations, kind of like
Yes.
like no matter how the different elements bump up against each other,
Yeah, but all these
it's gonna work.
innovative techniques like that they use right now in video games and sometimes even in film music as well. Back then, yeah, they were avant-garde, like they were cutting edge. Like not many people actually listened to this music, and it was very. But I think that they're still used. They're used, but they're used in a more popular aesthetics. Like you would have a music that is not as complicated as Earl Brown's or Morton Feldman's, for example. But the techniques that they use are similar. Or, for example, if you think about horror music, like from the horror movies or horror games, it is very like it's almost like spectralism or sonoristic music of the 70s or 60s, and it's like.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I teach little kids. I mean, if I have to, well, I don't really do that as much anymore, like general music classes for little kids. But times where I've had to be like, okay, this is what classical music is, like second graders. I'm not like there was this great man Beethoven, and then there's Mozart had a wig and Beethoven didn't. I mean, I'm more just like the movies. It's the movies. That's what classical music
Yes.
is. Like I'm just like, and the experimental, 20th century, it's a horror movie. And they're like, oh, I get that. It's like that stuff still exists. It's just like you gotta like frame it differently or whatever. I mean, maybe we should talk about the technical stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we can always sort of like how dorked out, how hard are we going to nerd out on like the real nitty gritty? But I am interested in just, like generative. I mean, people who are listening to the show, well, actually, no, me also, I could use a little, just when you're talking about like do an analog synth, right? Playing analog, no, modular synth, which is
Modular.
a very specific thing. Tell some folks, supposing that people know what a synthesizer is, they know what an analog synthesizer is, they kind of know what modular synthesis is, but like, you know, what's your like this generative thing, like how does that, what does that mean as far as your yeah, this is the medieval influenced music that you make that is generative.
Yeah, generative, the easy way to explain it is self-playing, like when the machine plays music itself. So you don't really have to influence a machine in any way. You can just set out certain like parameters, or for example, maybe even easier, like as if you write a code that plays music, like it would play music generatively. You don't really have to influence, you just like put it on and it plays it music. In modular synthesis, it's actually the way the modules, like any modular synthesizer, this is why they're called modular, because they are like built by module. Like you buy one module, next one, next one, and then you get a system, and it's like thousands of these modules available in the market currently. So you can build a system particularly for your musical practice, like you could build for jazz music, for experimental music, for ambient music, for contemporary classical, any kind of music actually. And my system is built for generative polyphony. It means that all the melodies, up to 4 melodies actually, I have 4 oscillators. Oscillators are the modules that generate tones, generate sound. And so these 4 oscillators, they are independent. They are independent modules, and each of the oscillator has its input, and this input is a complex function. Yeah, it's a bit. So they.
No,
have
you're. This is. I think people who don't know anything about this are understanding you for sure. So yeah. No,
yeah. Okay. So
yep.
you have like 4 complex functions that are independent of each other, and they generate melodies. There is this module that is called a quantizer. Basically, it generates, not generates, but it quantizes signal. Like you have electrical current, a complex function that is in the form of electrical current, and this module kind of nudges all the incoming electricity to a certain scale. For example, like I can choose a Pythagorean scale, Pythagorean mode, and then choose like 5, 7, 6 steps, for example, first of this mode.
Yeah, anyone and then if you've done Ableton, anyone who's done Ableton, it's the same as that quantizer thing where you right.
I mean, yeah, but usually I quantize it usually about the rhythm.
Right. In this case, it could be any parameter.
Yeah, but it's actually that. Yeah. It's not just about rhythm; it's about the pitch as well. So the pitch is quantized, okay. And so this is like all these complex functions. They get quantized by this quantizer, and then they ascend to the oscillator that produces melody. It sounds a bit complicated, but actually it is much easier. When I was doing this like master classes or lectures showing how it works in modular synthesizer, it's actually pretty simple. It's not that difficult. Actually, it's easier on modular synthesizer to develop a patch that would generate polyphony, independent polyphony, like the real polyphony, like the independent melodies, than to make them dependent. Because if you make them dependent, you would have to think about the movement. Function. Yeah, it's a very complex movement, and it's really not really. I mean, there are modules that allow you to do that, but I mean, for me personally, it doesn't really make any sense. Because,
but dude, if you wrote a patch that could make all of these polyphonic modules relate to each other based on like the conventions of like Palestrina's counterpoint, or based on like correct species counterpoint. Imagine how little money you would make doing that, but how excited I would be if you did that.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I'm not that interested in that, because all these limitations, because limitations of Perotin or Palestrina or Bach or like Monteverdi, they are all about their context. Like these are not limitations that like rationally could be proven in terms of like musicality, that it really sounds better. It's about the way the music was appreciated back then, like how they heard the music, like their ears were different from our ears.
Yes.
And it also has to do about the tuning as well, because some of the intervals sound better in Pythagorean tuning, like the fifth, for example, yes, or in the mean tone temperament, you would have pure thirds, for example. The thirds would be accentuated.
Yeah.
So it's like about all this very complex context, historical, socio-political as well.
Yeah, I was
So
interested when you said your stuff was in tunings other than equal temperament. I mean, I was actually kind of surprised when you first said that as Pythagorean, because I was like, oh, it doesn't sound that outside.
yeah,
But it does. I mean, when I sort of listened to it some more,
there are
definitely
certain
some moments.
fragments. Yeah,
Those
yeah.
thirds. There was some where I heard some natural thirds. I was like, oh, that it's like
Yes, but
you know.
actually, when you think about how the medieval music was performed, and when you hear performances of the medieval music, contemporary performances, the voices modulate as well. So
Yeah.
these intervals wouldn't be perfect.
I always wonder that. I'm like, why? I'm like, okay, so like singers now, including myself, when we're like singing together, like, are we tuning our thirds to like natural thirds, or have we like kind of not corrupted, but have we tweaked our understanding, of what a third is to have we rounded it to like an equal tempered third, and
Yeah,
now,
but it wouldn't even, for example, if you would try to make it like a perfect third, like a mathematically like real third, you wouldn't be able to do it anyway, because your voice would fluctuate. It would have this micro fluctuate. Like in digital music, yes, it can be done. It was very, very easily done. But in analog synthesis, it couldn't be done, because analog modules, analog synthesizer, they fluctuate as well, so they can't really hold a tone very well. And when you modulate them as well, it kind of can go very, like, the range could be of pitch modulation could be very wide. And if you, for example, listen to or ensemble organum performances,
so good. I mean, that stuff.
Yeah, and Grand Delavoi as well, they do this modulations, and they are not always perfect. And it's not about the perfection, about the like constructing these intervals. It's about the music. So kind of why I chose Pythagorean tuning is just because some of the theorists during Middle Ages, they wrote about that it's supposed to like, we're supposed to use Pythagorean tuning, but we have no evidence whether this tuning was actually used back then.
It could have just been,
maybe not. Yeah, like yes. So
was that like Boethius? Was he talking about that? Boethius?
Yeah, sure, yes, because it came from Greeks, and Boethius was like, So, and so I don't even know whether I should use Pythagorean tuning, but it sounds interesting to me, and it actually makes sense because I don't modulate in terms of I don't transpose. I don't go from one tonality to other. So I stay in, for example, in Dorian, in C Dorian, and it stays in C Dorian.
Yes.
All the time, mostly. And I don't go to like C sharp Dorian, or I don't know, F.
Well, that would Dorian. Be a whole different aesthetic. I mean, if you were modulate, that would be almost.
Yeah, it's not really medieval then, and it doesn't really work in terms of polyphony, because polyphony stays in this. Like, it's not really about the chord changes, about the changes. It's about the movement of the voices. And I think about this music as four voices that are moving independently. They don't always sound together. There are just a few moments when they actually sound together. But actually, this was true in medieval, for example, mass. If you listen to Mashaw's mass, not just the ordinary, like the whole mass, it would feature monophony as well, for example. And actually, this is what I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to get to the form of the mass. Like right now, it's not really there, but I think I will be able to. I need to do more research.
No, that's a great. I mean, because then it's just like a variety. It's like an album. That's like an album. You got the plain chant, and then you got
and actually the form is the most difficult in generative music, because actually, if to be like conceptually pure, I would have to just leave this system on stage and walk away. And
well, that was my question. I mean, that was actually my next question, is just what do you do when you play these live sets? Like, what are you manipulating there? I mean,
because I don't do free improvisations. I do structured improvisations. I'm very fond of structured improvisation because to me, the meaning in music is produced by its form or its structure. So I can't really produce any meaning just leaving synthesizer on stage. I mean, it would work more or less, but it wouldn't be interesting to me. So I have to construct certain form to come up with it. And in generative music, it's a bit complicated because it doesn't really want to go from one state to another. It wants to stay. It's like the it kind of wants to stay, in a certain.
It wants to do all its. It wants to.
So you set it up in a certain way, and it's like stays in this state,
like all the variety. Like it wants to go through all the variety,
like a garden.
Within its little thing. Yeah,
like a garden. Like basically, this was Brian Eno. He came up with this idea that generative music as a garden and generative music composer as a gardener. So you just plant a garden. So you have like these seeds, the initial parameters, and they are predetermined. Same thing with the patch, when it's how you connect these modules together. And then when you allow it to grow, it kind of grows uniquely the way it grows. And you don't really, if you plant like many gardens, like 100 of them, using the same seeds, even the same area, every time it would be a different garden. But you would have certain, like the certain structure of the garden would be there, like it wouldn't go away. But what the experience of the garden would be different every time. Sometimes I use the idiomatic jazz improvisation as a reference, but it's not really very close to idiomatic jazz. When you have just jazz standards, for example, when you have play like in a real book or Faber, but it's very it's kind of different. But sometimes, like for some people, they kind of can understand this better if they think about jazz.
Okay.
But
on the most literal technical level, what are you tweaking on like what parameters are you changing? Like,
I'm changing the timbres of the voices. I use simple basic waveforms because this is actually another topic that is quite interesting. That electronic music has this problem with the timbres that are very sticky. They stick to their context. For example, if you hear a bass from the 80s, pop music, for example, or the reverberation that they used on all the instruments in the during the 80s, you immediately identify, okay, this is the 80s track. You don't even have to write an 80s melody, because it's really not about melody, it's more about the timbre, the way it sounds. So it's very difficult to unstick this sound from its context. And if we talk about medieval music, it's vocal music mostly, and vocal timbres are timeless, because as long as we will exist as humans, I don't know, maybe like as a hybrids, like cyborgs, maybe it will change, but as humans, so we'll have voices with us, and the voice it always been there, and it will always be as long as we will be. So it's the most timeless of all the instrument. But in electronic music, you don't really have this, but you have these basic waveforms that are probably they are getting the closest of all the timbres to the timelessness, because they are basic. They don't really mean anything, but still, when you use it, you kind of I get this like, oh, it sounds a bit like Terry Riley or something.
Because I guess just the more music using analog synthesizers is made over the decades, just the amount of it will make it less sticky to the 80s. Like, so this is when someone has only heard your music and has never heard Depeche Mode or something, they're not going to be like, oh, that little sounds like Black Celebration or whatever,
this is one of the parameters. So the timbres, they change like a square wave to sawtooth to sine wave to triangle. These are different waveforms. Another parameter is the ambitus or range of the melody. and its register as well. So I can change register and range of each melody on each of the oscillators, for example. Another parameter is the imitativeness of polyphony. Like if you take, for example, motets that come kind of, they don't really come after organums, but they kind of contemporary. Yes, they're contemporaries, but kind of they sound as if they come later. I mean,
motets are a little later. I don't think they're motets.
But they in same, like in the same manuscripts, and they have been written probably. Well, okay, so but they sound as if it's like a next step.
It does, yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
And they have imitation there, and as well as they have this isorhythmic structure. So both the isorhythmic structure. Oh yes, I forgot to mention rhythm, so I can change rhythm as well. So
okay,
but it changes. Like it's not really. I can't really change it precisely, but I can change it more or less. Relation, how one rhythm relates to another, something like this. And for example, but I can produce either rhythms. So I can impose, like I have several melodies. For example, one would be sequenced, right? And I would impose a rhythmical structure that is repeating itself. But the melody, that the pitches stay like in sequence.
Okay, so like a patch. I mean, so you'll have a patch that is just like a sequence of notes, and then you've got another controller thing that controls the rhythm of that. And you're doing so you're doing all that live. That's tons. Like that's okay, yeah.
That's I mean, it might sound like this, but like that. But actually, when I've been working on this patch for 4 or 5 years, so it's like a lot of this research and a lot of this work on this patch, I kind of internalize it, and I can manipulate it. I don't really think about all the stuff. I think just the stuff that I want to change. So I don't really have to keep in mind this, okay, I need this isorhythm here. Let's think about how to do this. It comes automatically almost.
You mean like you almost have like licks in a way,
like a jazz, like a muscle memory, basically.
Like tropes, like types of stuff that sound good, gestures that you do. Yeah. Right.
Some of the material could be played by the synthesizer itself. It doesn't, by the machine itself. I don't really have to influence it at all. So I just choose certain parameters in certain segment of the performance of the live structure to influence, and that's all. And I also have this idea about like for example, I use filters as well. Filters are the modules that filter the basic waveforms, because most of the basic waveforms, they are very like harsh sounding. They have a lot of harmonics.
Yeah, you got to take the highs.
Yeah. So you have to take but I kind of understand this as as amount of light that goes into space, because in medieval music, if you think about how polyphonic music was performed in the cathedrals, it was a multimedia show, really, because it featured not just sound, it was clothing as well, it was scent, aroma, and it was light coming from the light show. So it's very and light is very important in medieval thought, in Christian thought as well. So I try to think about filter as a device that kind of brings light or kind of damps the room, like something like that. In terms, so I'm not thinking about it in terms of sound, but more in terms of light when I think about this.
Yeah. It's listening to like gospel music, man. The timbre of the vocal timbres that are being used. It's like, it's so like open, the filter. I mean, it's like so much high, like intense high stuff,
And in sacred harp music as well. It's like absolutely.
It's so bright, it's like your average like medieval music, like performance style is like, it's really like you've got a low pass filter, like, like it's by comparison, it's like so muted. It's so muted, compared to these other traditions and stuff. Yeah. So, and you do some, like, as far as improvisation, I mean, you're talking about, you've got like structured, I mean, improvisation that's like, you've got a lot of this planned out, and you've got various like specific types of gestures and stuff that you're doing. Like muscle memory type stuff. I mean, have you done a bunch of like straight up free improvisation with other people? Because you've got a record with like duo with a saxophonist, right?
Yeah. We at least we tried. I think the most advanced improvisation was with Maxim Kolomits, an oboist that played on Madrigal's record. So he kind of understood what I'm doing back then when we recorded Madrigals, and it was easier to work with him, because a lot of people don't really understand when I talk about it how it's supposed to work, what they're supposed to play, especially when it comes to classically trained musicians. And I say that I don't really have a score. I can write it down for you, but it doesn't really make any sense, because what my synthesizer would produce would be very different every time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
but like Maxim kind of got it, and yeah, we improvised with him and with Alter Ratio vocal and contemporary vocal ensemble as well. We performed last August in Berlin Dom. It's a huge cathedral in Berlin. And we did like a very short segment with the old KYIV chant. It's an Orthodox chant, just a melody. And I generated like a counterpoint melody on a synthesizer and a drone for this. Like it worked really interestingly. Yeah.
Interesting. And so they were singing non-improvised, just singing this ancient. Wait, is it Orthodox chant Ukrainian Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox?
Yeah, Ukrainian.
Ukrainian. Yeah. So you have dug into straight up Ukrainian, like
I mean, but it was it was like an opportunity. They invited me to do just one bit with them.
It's right. It's not part of your concept, obviously, going into the Ukrainian, like as you
said.
But
I mean, it's okay. I mean, as a side project, it would be okay. I would be interested in this as well, because it's still early music.
Yeah, totally. And so, but the right. Okay, so they're singing this chant, predetermined, not improvised.
Yeah.
And you've got a patch and stuff that is live generating a counter melody based on the chant. Okay. But so your stuff is somewhat indeterminate because it's dealing with the modular.
Yes, it's indeterminate. I mean, I still can influence it's generative, but I can influence the range of it, the register of the melody, like the octave, for example. But how exactly it moves, I can't really predict at all.
I really, in one of these things you were talking about, this is doing a mixed metaphor away from the gardening, but the metaphor of like, you were like, you think of some of these patches, you said you think of them like birds, or like something's like a bird with like its own sort of personality or something, this character. Because I often think about that. I moved into this neighborhood that's got a lot more birds and a lot less other noise. So I actually wake up to the birds, and it's like that thing where you hear, there's like a certain bird, it doesn't repeat anything exactly, but it's got this like patch that it's right. It's got like a way. It has a little mode to it. And you're like, and then you've got like 5 of them in a tree, and they're not necessarily interacting. Maybe they're just simultaneous. So there's some interaction, but they each have their little algorithm or something, that's going like, I don't know. That seems like a metaphor, not just because the stuff sounds chirpy with the electronics, because it doesn't have to sound chirpy, and actually most of the stuff doesn't. But man.
But it actually was a specific period when I wrote about these creatures or birds, all this stuff. Actually, when I was working on Madrigal's album, and then when I was performing this music, it was like an earlier iteration of this patch that was a bit different. And I kind of developed this weird, feeling as if like some parts of the system was a being, like a creature, and it wanted me to do certain things, and it didn't want to do other things. So it was a bit weird. But in this current system, I don't really have it. It's very different. It's more abstract. I don't really have this connection.
I'm very much not up on the AI in art discourse, but it keeps coming up in everything. You definitely seem to have zero anxiety. Maybe I'm like about this. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are like, what's going to happen when the machines, but I mean, is this, also pardon my whatever, but I mean, is a patch, is that AI? Does that
No.
qualify? It doesn't really, right?
No, no, no,
It's
no,
not.
no.
Yeah,
And it's actually what I kind of have problems with a lot of electronic music festivals that kind of try to pursue this cutting edge technology thing, and they sound almost futuristic, and I don't really like this futuristic thing at all. I don't really find any meaning in it. Like it sounds almost like a dark attraction, like the entertainment park or something like this. You know, when they introduce this new technology to create artworks, and it's not really reflected very much. It's just new. It's
yeah,
just
it's
like
just
novel.
Promethean, for the sake of it, or whatever.
Yes, yeah, and it doesn't really, at least for me, it doesn't really make much sense. And unfortunately, a lot of electronic music festivals are doing this thing. I don't know why. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it's still like this electronic music still has some sort of like futuristic tinge to it.
Yeah. I mean, what so what is the difference on just the most technical computer level, the difference between something that is like generative music and like AI? Like how is AI, how is an AI different than a patch? Like
I think it should be. I mean, it's. I'm not an AI expert, so I don't really know how AI systems work. I kind of have a grasp of like neural network thing that goes on like ChatGPT and all this stuff. They are trained on stuff like on a lot of information, and they try to kind of replicate it. And actually, what I find the most amusing and the most useful that they do is when they mistake. They do mistakes, and these mistakes are the most beautiful thing that you could that could come out of them. I mean, we did this back in 2017, I think it was. It was a poetry festival, and together with my colleague Alexei Shmurak, we did this project where we trained a neural network on top hits of the last year, like last year's top hits, lyrics of the last year's top hits. And it came up with all absolutely insane stuff. Like it was, some of the stuff was actually good, like good in terms of like, it sounded like a popular music text. It even had meaning. But the most amazing stuff was like it completely bonkers. Like it's absolutely amazing. And this the another thing is this. Do you know this model that kind of replicates Bach, that writes music as if like
I have not. That's
so. It works the best when it like during the first iterations, on the early stage. So the mistakes are so horrible that it's beautiful. It's absolutely
yeah.
And the most beautiful of them are the modules that actually generate audio, because they mistake a lot. And when they mistake, it's not like MIDI data, like notes. They mistake like it's spectra, and they mistake. Their mistakes are acoustic. You can hear them. They are kind of all the weird noises that they come up with, that absolutely amazing. And I'm always interested in this kind of stuff, but this kind of stuff doesn't really gets exhibited at these kind of festivals and all this stuff. They seem to be more interested in replicating the stuff, like making AI a useful thing,
well, they hate people. I mean, that's what
yeah. So what my machine does, it's very different. I don't train it. Like I just
that's
connect.
right. It doesn't. This kind of thing is not a. It's not. It's not intelligence. It's a machine. It doesn't do machine learning, right? Machine learning is the word, right? That's what that's the difference.
It's not learned. It's unlearned. But I mean, at some point though, it feels as if it is possessed by something. When you play, when the patch is complex enough, when I mean you can't really kind of hold all the processes in your mind that are going on inside this machine. And at this times, it feels as if like some being is there, that is it is possessed by something, by spirit. I don't know. And I wrote about this, like my latest blog post, like Begeisterung. They have like this German word that is it's usually translated as being enthusiastic about something, but it's like begeistern. Geist is ghost.
Yes.
So it's like being possessed by a spirit, a ghost, but it's usually used in neutral or positive sense, not like haunted.
Right,
in
right,
English,
right.
because haunted is like it's negative connotation.
Well, it's like Hegel, Geist. Well, that's a whole other, that's philosophical,
Yes.
but right, but yeah.
Yeah. And this is actually what it feels like sometimes working with this machine. And it's interesting feeling. And I mean, I have sometimes very weird experiences with it. It starts to do some mistakes or do something that I couldn't really explain why it is doing this. And at times, like, I don't really, for example, some of the shows I can't really prepare for this show. I don't really have time or something like this. And then everything goes perfect. Like, and it's not really me, it's the machine, because I'm not really doing much. Like, for example, if I would play a musical instrument, then it would be me. I know this is my body, I know I'm probably and I know the stars aligned or something like this, and I play perfectly, but this is machine. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's like you have like a solo setup. I mean, everyone knows how awesome it is to have a solo project where you can show up and just do the gig. But you've got this, but it's not solo. It's actually like kind of like a band. Or like you with these entities, right? But you've got it mastered to the extent that you know the types of things that are going to happen. Yeah,
it actually kind of, I feel like it's in conversation with my body, because I have I mean, I had a SSHL, sudden sensory neurological hearing loss, something like this, 6 years ago. 5. So you just lose hearing out of the blue. It's like they can't really explain why it's happening. And I had this partial hearing loss in my right ear. So, but I got used to it. I mean,
it's permanent.
You see me it can be permanent, but in my case, it kind of partially regained. So it's still not there completely. I have certain frequencies for a certain range from around 200 hertz to around 1,000 hertz that are probably minus 40 or minus 30 decibels. So it's like, I have this
the disco
yes,
disco EQ
in my right ear. So I don't really but when I experience like stereo sound, it's not really stereo. It's my mind tricking me as if it's like stereo. I'm not really
it's like a phantom limb or something. It's like filling it in. Oh man, that's well.
But it's I was
going to say, like, I'm so sorry, but you're obviously just
no. It's really and it's interesting. It's very. I mean, the machine kind of plays with it, because at certain times I'm not really sure about the tuning, because I try to relate on my ear when I tune the oscillators, because I have to tune them before the show, and sometimes even during the show, if they go out of tune, they're very like if the humidity or temperature is fluctuating, they're very sensible to this stuff. It's not, and sometimes it feels because I can't really hear very well, for example, if they're triangle or sine wave forms, when you don't have a lot of harmonics that can tell your mind what kind of pitch is it at the moment.
Right.
It kind of gets, I get confused, and sometimes it feels like they're out of tune, and sometimes they are out of tune, and sometimes they are not. And this is another thing, that this ambiguity that like it's brought my body created this ambiguity, but with this machine that is ambiguous as well, that is not really, I can't really be sure of what it will do. It kind of plays together, it's like a very interesting relationship.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing of the fact that all of this is just is plugging into a very physical thing. I mean, the only, with all the imperfections, it's a thing plugging into a body. It's you and another body. The only analog synth I have is the. I mean, I don't have modular synths at all. I have the Behringer Wasp, that little thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's like my first analog synth. But yeah, that doesn't stay in tune. It's always like it's up and down. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, man. I feel like we've got a lot in here, my man.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we could have this be a little a cadence, you know, the 2-hour cadence point. Unless I don't know, what is there anything else on your mind, Ben, or just like stuff coming up? I mean, you're in the middle of a tour, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, how many more dates do you have to go? Or like, where's next?
Next, the Australia,
The Australian gig, yeah.
Adelaide. Yeah, I will be playing at the Illuminate Festival, but they have this like Unsound stage. Unsound is the electronic music festival. I think originally from Poland, because there's still like I played at Unsound in Krakow last year.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they have like this stage of this festival there. So we'll play there. And then actually I have 2 small shows in Switzerland, in Lucerne and forgot Zurich.
Okay.
Yeah, in Zurich.
Okay.
As well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I played in
Zurich,
Lucerne. Yeah, Lucerne's great. Yeah.
Did you enjoy it? Yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, excellent. Everyone should. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to edit in some of your music at the beginning of this because I was gonna play some samples, but we just got so deep on the conversation. I was just like, there was no. I don't know. It just didn't. I could have like. Yeah, for the podcast version, I'm going to definitely put some of the new record and some of the. I mean, it seems like the live from the bomb shelter, live stream.
Yeah.
Seems like a very pure representation of what you're doing, right? I mean, that seems
yeah,
like
but it's
very
not the best musical performance, because back then it was like the stuff that I play live now is much better than the live from the bomb shelter. But it was actually, it felt more like an activism back then, because we were very, I don't know even how to put it into words, because like the whole world like crumbled and you don't really know who you are anymore when the war started, and when a lot of people fled their cities and left for Lviv and stayed in Lviv as well, musicians as well. And so we organized this like series of live streams coming from first it was Vedel School of Music. It's like a school of electronic music of my friend, and he had like all the live streaming equipment. So we organized a series of these live streams, and then after the air raid alarms were becoming more frequent, we found the nearest bomb shelter, provided it with the internet connection, and it was my turn to play. And then I played there, and I remember then when I was rehearsing, I felt no connection to music at all. I was checking news on my phone, and I was a bit worried about staying in headphones, because I had to wear my headphones during the rehearsal, because it's a bit. I mean, it was important to hear everything around. This is actually one of the reasons why I stopped listening to music, because before, like in 2021, I listened every day. I listened to a new album, like it was my thing.
Yeah.
Like
I go in phases. I go in phases with that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And then and I would usually listen while walking around the city. It's like one of the best probably ways to listen to music, just in my headphones. But even after I returned to Kyiv, I realized that I couldn't really continue this practice, because it's too dangerous to walk around the city.
That is fucking crazy. Yes. I mean, just listening. Yeah, we're listening for your literally like your own survival. Eclipses listening to think for any pleasure or sacred purposes. Yeah, man. Yeah.
But some people did it. Like I remember, even when a week or 2 weeks after I returned, it was still dangerous. That like everything was kind of in a lockdown. There were just a few cafes or restaurants open, and they had like military checkpoints everywhere. But I saw people walking around the Kyiv in headphones, listening to music.
Right.
It was absolutely, I mean, absurd. It was amazing, you know. But
that's a form of defiance too. You're like, you are not going to let, you know. It's just like, like I will not disrupt my my life for this. I mean, you know, I get it, but yeah, dude, that's fucking insane, man. I mean, I didn't actually realize when I saw that you had done the thing in a bomb shelter. I wasn't sure whether you were actually taking refuge in it in that moment, as like you had to be there, or whether it was like at a more
we had to be there because of the air raid alarms. But we actually there was a problem, like we couldn't invite anyone to this performance, so it was just live streamed. Because if we would have invited people, this bomb shelter would be too crowded, and in case the air raid alarm would go off, the people who live in the area, they couldn't like fit into this bomb shelter. So it was a very unethical thing. It would have been a very unethical thing to do. So
yeah, man. Jesus, man. Yeah, I cannot imagine. I can't imagine. I mean, closest thing New Yorkers have is 9/11, but that ain't the same. That's literally one thing. It's not like a protracted war, man. Well, dude, I mean, it's obvious, but kudos for persevering, man. I mean, or just being able to persevere as an artist in the midst of this stuff. I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, you'll look back on this album, right? It'll change over the years and years. It'll just have like more and more different meaning to you, right? I mean, as it gets like further in the past, man. I mean, are you gonna like? That's the thing with the like. Are you gonna? Well, I guess you don't have to know or plan, but like. No. I was gonna ask, are you about to shift right back to the organ and medieval style? But you said you already have an album, of that recorded, man. So maybe we'll see. Maybe you'll get into a different. Maybe after that comes out, maybe.
I'm actually very enjoying live performances. I really like this idea that you don't have a product, really. Like you just do your practice, and that's all.
You're not
and
not
if
on an
people
album
want to listen to you, they have to visit your live performances, because it kind of it can battle this Spotify kind of streaming era when you have like 60,000 singles released every day, something like this.
Is that the number?
Yeah, something like this is absolutely insane amount. So, and it's something that could return the cost of not cost of the value of music. And I was thinking also about the radical idea of like not me, but for any like a different artist, for example, for doing just live performances until you die. And that's all.
Yeah. I mean, who didn't? I mean, they didn't do this. It wasn't strictly this, but that band, No Neck Blues Band. Were you ever into them at all? Did you ever get into them? They were not a blues band, but there's just a weird name. But they're like this kind of noisy collective psych thing in New York that had like the rotating cast of like 10 people. I don't know. They were just kind of had a legendary vibe of like they barely ever recorded. The records weren't even really anything. They mostly were just live. Like it was this kind of vibe. It's a very like. I don't know. There's something. Yeah. I mean, playing live is always this kind of just like existential, like this is this right now. I am this human being on stage for 45 minutes, but it's like, when you do that, but you're not even on an album cycle. It's not even to represent a product. I've been kind of on that vibe too, which is doing this like acoustic, just singer songwriter sets where I'm just like, I can do this at any moment. Yeah. There's no purpose other than just this show. But yeah, man. Yeah, I guess everything you're going through, it's stripping things down to this existential thing of just getting on stage, man. So just riding with that, Cool, man. Well,
cool. Thank you so much for inviting me. Actually.
I really, really appreciate you coming on here, Oleh. And I'll keep obviously I'm gonna keep vibing to your stuff. Let's trade more and more shit,
Definitely.
I'm going to keep up with your writing too, man. Yeah. Oh, that's my last question. I see like your blog posts that they make me think maybe you write a lot of like longer form stuff. Do you do like longer essays or anything?
No, fortunately no, because I can't really find any, there's a problem that I grew up during the live journal era. Like this was the social network that I grew up with. And it kind of allowed you to express yourself in a longer texts in longer formats, and then it all switched to Facebook, then Twitter came, Instagram, and I kind of I maybe if I find something, I mean this is one of the reasons when I kind of published blog on my website, because I didn't have a blog. I used to write on Facebook. There's Facebook posts. One of the reasons was that I missed this large, like long form format. So maybe I will write more we'll see.
Because it seems like those blog posts, they definitely, each one of them is just like, this could be an essay, this could be an essay.
Yeah.
But you're kind of like opening up. It almost has this vibe of like,
but
could someone
the
write
thing is,
this?
I transferred them from Facebook, so this is why they feel like that. Because in Facebook, it wouldn't make sense to write an essay.
No. Of course, no. Of course, of course, totally. No, but it almost had this vibe. It has this vibe of like being like, could somebody? It's almost like you're writing a patch of meaning, a patch of stuff that should be generated. You know what I mean? But hell yeah, man. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you
again. Thank you so much.
Great conversation.
Yeah. We'll be in touch, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Stay safe, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well. All right, everyone. Another great one, right? I guess we didn't really address the comments too much, but it's all good. Thank you everyone for listening. And again, anyone, if you're still here, please do subscribe to the Patreon. The link will be below. It will let me, if we get the Patreon, it helps, just give me more time, resources to do homework for these streams, So there it is. Next, I'll spoil the surprise. We've got Nick Podgorski coming on in a couple of weeks. That's the next one. And there we go. Everyone, take care, and I'll see you at the next stream. Peace.